Have you ever had that one moment where everything just clicked? Like, boom, you felt connected to something bigger than yourself. Maybe it was during a meditation, a walk in nature, a deep conversation, or even a sudden insight at 2 a.m. In that moment, the universe made sense. You felt peaceful, clear, alive. But then, next morning, nothing. The clarity's gone. That fire in your chest, it fizzled out. And what's left behind is this strange emptiness. A stillness that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like limbo. If you've ever experienced that shift, like you had a glimpse of something sacred and then got dropped back into the noise of daily life feeling more lost than before, you're not broken. You're not failing. You're actually standing at a turning point. And what you're facing might be one of the most misunderstood phases in the entire spiritual journey. Today, we're diving deep into something Carl Jung understood better than most, the motivation crisis that often follows spiritual awakening. Because let's be real, nobody tells you this part. The books skip over it. The gurus often gloss it up. But this isn't about pretty quotes or bypassing discomfort. This is about the brutal honesty of transformation. That awkward, messy middle. That in-between space where the old has died, but the new hasn't quite shown up yet. So, let's unpack this. The shadow of enlightenment. There's this romantic idea about enlightenment, that once you awaken, boom, you're peaceful, wise, always motivated, forever in flow, like you've somehow transcended the chaos of being human. But Jung would say, not so fast. Real awakening doesn't delete your humanity, it actually magnifies it. When you pierce through the veil, when you really see, you're not floating above your problems. You're asked to meet them in a deeper, more honest way than ever before. Before awakening, motivation was easy, right? You wanted things: success, love, respect, comfort. Your ego had a checklist, and it pushed you toward those goals with laser focus. Then something happened. You saw through it. You realized those goals, those status symbols and comfort zones weren't the whole picture, and suddenly they lost their shine. What used to drive you now feels hollow. The urgency's gone, the direction blurry. And that's not failure. That's what Jung called the Night Sea Journey, the deep, dark descent after touching the light. It's the moment the ego's map stops working and you're left floating in unfamiliar waters. The death of artificial purpose. Let's be brutally honest. A lot of what used to motivate us was, well, fake. It was built on what we were told we should want, social norms, family pressures, that deep fear that if we don't do something important, we'll disappear into insignificance. Jung understood this. He said our egos build elaborate frameworks of meaning to help us cope with life. Systems, identities, purposes. They're not bad, but they're limited. They're like scaffolding. Then comes awakening, and it kicks that scaffolding down. Now you're standing there with nothing propping you up. No clear goals, no obvious direction, just space. That void you're staring into, Jung called it the raw experience of existence, stripped of filters. No ego constructs, no artificial purpose, just you and the mystery. So yeah, of course motivation collapses. The entire engine behind it just fell apart. This is often the first major breakdown in any spiritual path. The ecstasy of awakening fades, and what's left is not a high, it's a flat line, a long pause, a strange quiet that can last for months, sometimes years. The individuation crisis. Jung had a term for this: individuation. It's the process of becoming who you truly are, beneath the masks, the programming, the roles you've been playing. Sounds beautiful, right? But here's the part no one warns you about. Individuation feels like dying. Not physically, but psychologically. Because to become your truest self, the version of you built on false motivations, the one chasing approval or avoiding fear, has to dissolve. That version was functional, sure, but it wasn't whole. So, when that familiar self starts fading, the motivation that came with it disappears too. Suddenly, you're adrift. No roadmap, no inner voice saying, "Go do this," just silence. This is the motivation crisis. And it's not a mistake, it's a feature of the journey. It means the old system is breaking down to make room for something more real. The collective unconscious pulls back the veil. One of Jung's most profound ideas was the collective unconscious, a shared layer of experience beneath our personal awareness. It holds archetypes, symbols, stories passed through humanity for generations. Sometimes, during a spiritual awakening, you touch that. You feel connected to something ancient, bigger than your little story. And for a moment, it all makes sense. Then you come back to your normal life. Dishes, bills, emails, and suddenly, all that meaning is gone. How do you reconcile what you felt with the reality you're living? That's the tension. On one side, the timeless awareness you touched. On the other, the mundane world of deadlines and errands. Your old goals feel small, but you still have to function. Jung would say, you're not meant to resolve that tension. You're meant to live in it, to let it shape you. This isn't about going back to who you were or pretending you're above it all. It's about letting both sides of your nature, the sacred and the ordinary, have a voice. That's the crucible where your new self begins to form. The shadow work of motivation. Here's where it gets even harder. After awakening, another force often rises, the shadow. Jung defined the shadow as all the parts of yourself you've disowned. Fears, impulses, memories, desires that don't fit your ideal image. And guess what? Awakening doesn't delete the shadow. It often brings it into full view. It's like the lights came on, and suddenly the basement of your psyche is lit up. You start seeing parts of yourself you'd rather not deal with. Old anger, selfishness, insecurity, hunger for control. And now there's a war inside. On one side, your higher awareness is calling you toward peace, purpose, transcendence. On the other side, these raw human instincts are screaming for attention. The ego doesn't know how to respond, so it shuts down. And that's why you feel stuck. Not lazy, not broken, just paralyzed, caught between two forces that seem impossible to reconcile. It's not a character flaw, it's a signal that you're moving through a major psychological shift. And it means you're not at the end, you're just getting started. All right, let's pick up right where we left off. So, you've awakened. You've glimpsed something bigger than yourself. The veil has lifted, and now you're just stuck. You feel flat, drained. You're not motivated by what used to light you up, and you're not sure what's supposed to take its place. You're in the middle of something real, but it doesn't come with instructions. This next phase is where things get even more raw. It's what Jung might describe as a symbolic death and rebirth. Let's break that down. The symbolic death and rebirth. Across cultures, myths, and history, there's one archetype that shows up again and again, the death and rebirth cycle. Think of the phoenix, the caterpillar becoming a butterfly, or even old myths of gods descending into the underworld only to rise again transformed. This isn't just a poetic metaphor. Jung saw it as a map for what actually happens during deep psychological transformation. And that motivation crisis you're feeling? That's the death part. The self you used to be, the one driven by goals, ambition, recognition, it's dissolving. Not because you failed, but because that version of you wasn't the whole picture. But here's the problem. We live in a world that doesn't respect these in-between phases. Society wants us to always be progressing, producing, grinding. There's no room for pause, no space for psychological winter. So when we hit this stage, where everything feels still, lifeless, confusing, we panic. We try to fix it, push through it, get back to normal. But transformation doesn't care about your deadlines. This part of the journey requires you to sit in the dark for a while, to let the old version of you fully break down, not halfway, all the way. And yeah, it feels like nothing is happening, but underneath the surface, your psyche is doing deep work, preparing, reorganizing, composting the old so the new can grow. This isn't burnout, it's the alchemical process in action. The alchemical transformation. Jung was obsessed with alchemy, not because he believed you could turn lead into gold literally, but because the process mirrored something far more powerful. In alchemical terms, you're in the nigredo stage, blackening, the stage where things rot, fall apart, lose form. It's a messy, uncomfortable stage, and you're not supposed to skip it. Your old motivations are decomposing. And that decomposition, that's actually creative. Think of a seed in the soil. Before it sprouts, it has to crack open. It has to rot. It has to die, in form, so life can emerge in a new way. That's where you are. And here's where we hit a huge trap, trying to bypass this process. We get freaked out by the lack of motivation, so we set new goals, start new habits, create routines, try to will ourselves back to productivity. But here's the catch. That's like trying to water a seed before it breaks open. You can't skip the rotting. Your old drive was ego-fueled, based on identity, fear, social programming. What's emerging next, if you let it, is authentic motivation. Something deeper, something you don't push, it pulls you. But to get there, you have to be still. You have to let the old system die fully. The emergence of authentic motivation. Let's talk about what's on the other side. Eventually, after enough inner composting, something starts to shift. You don't wake up with a brand new 5-year plan. You don't suddenly feel like taking over the world. Instead, it's subtle. You feel drawn to something small, a conversation, a book, a walk, a project that resonates. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, but it feels right. This is motivation, not as pressure, but as attraction. Not, I must do this to be enough, but this calls me. I want to be part of this. It's what Joseph Campbell, who was deeply influenced by Jung, called following your bliss. But this isn't about chasing pleasure or avoiding pain. It's about following that subtle inner compass, that quiet sense of alignment. This new motivation doesn't burn you out. It doesn't demand you sacrifice your soul for success. It flows from a place of wholeness. And no, you can't force it, you can't manufacture it. It arrives after the darkness has done its work. Living in the tension. So how do you navigate the space between the old motivation that's gone and the new one that hasn't fully arrived? Jung would say you hold the tension. Not solve it, not escape it, you live in it. This is one of the hardest spiritual skills. To not rush out of discomfort, to not chase false clarity, to sit with the unknown and let it teach you. Holding the tension means accepting that both things are true. You've touched something sacred, and yet you're still human. You've awakened, and yet you still have doubts. You want to move forward, but there's nowhere to go, yet. This space is the furnace where real transformation happens. And the people who can stay here without collapsing or bypassing are the ones who emerge with depth, wisdom, and authenticity. Yes, it's hard, but it's necessary. And most importantly, you're not alone in it. The journey is not linear. Here's something nobody tells you. This process isn't one and done. You don't awaken once, integrate once, and then live in eternal peace forever. The journey of individuation, the path to becoming your whole self, is cyclical. It spirals. You go through these phases again and again, each time deeper than the last. So if you've been through this before and you're here again, that's not regression, that's refinement. Each cycle strips away another layer. Each motivation crisis helps you peel back one more mask. Each return to the void prepares you for a truer expression of yourself. The key is your relationship to the process. Over time, you learn to trust it, to recognize the signs, to know when it's time to push and when it's time to rest. You stop seeing it as a breakdown and start seeing it as a retuning. Jung didn't promise an escape from being human. What he offered was something more real, a way to make your struggles meaningful, a way to turn darkness into depth. Welcome back. So far, we've walked through the strange emptiness that follows spiritual awakening, the collapse of your old motivation system, the symbolic death of your former self, and the slow emergence of something new. Now comes perhaps the most beautiful and unexpected part of the journey, the return. The return to the world. Joseph Campbell, whose work on the hero's journey was deeply influenced by Jung, called this the final stage of transformation, the return. This is when the hero, you, comes back to ordinary life after touching something extraordinary. But you don't return empty-handed, you bring gifts. New vision, new purpose, a deeper way of engaging with the world. And the wild part? Your outer life might look the same, but your inner orientation is completely different. You're not back to chasing achievements to feel worthy. You're not performing for approval or surviving on hustle. You've been rewired. Now you create, contribute, serve because it's an honest expression of who you are, not because it proves anything. This is the rebirth. You've been through the fire. You've met the void. And now your actions arise from a deeper place. You don't need motivation in the old sense anymore. You're living in alignment. What authentic motivation looks like. So let's talk practically. What does this new kind of motivation feel like in daily life? It's not flashy. It's not frantic. It's not about smashing goals. Instead, it's quiet, steady, rooted. You might still make music, build businesses, teach, heal, write, lead. But it's no longer about becoming someone. It's about expressing someone, the version of you that's already whole. This motivation isn't driven by lack. It doesn't come from fear of falling behind. It's not built on comparison or compensation. It comes from a deep sense of yes. You're pulled by life, not pushed by ego. And ironically, you may find yourself more effective than ever, but there's no desperation in your movement, just clarity, just flow. You're not hustling for significance, you're living it. The subtle shift from doing to being. This entire journey shifts your relationship with life itself. You stop treating life like a mountain to conquer. Instead, it becomes a canvas, a conversation, a place where being present is the point. You move from doing to being, from striving to allowing, from controlling to participating. And no, that doesn't mean you become passive. In fact, your engagement with life deepens, but now it's conscious, responsive, free from the old inner war. You're no longer trying to become something through effort. You're simply expressing what's already true. And in that, you discover a strange peace, a quiet joy. The ongoing journey. Now, I wish I could tell you that once you've passed through this desert, it's smooth sailing forever. But Jung's psychology makes it clear. This path spirals. You'll likely experience multiple deaths and rebirths over a lifetime. Multiple cycles of awakening, unraveling, reintegration. And that's not a flaw. That's growth. Each time you're stripped down, you build back from a deeper place. Each time the old falls apart, something more true takes its place. The difference over time? You stop resisting the cycle. You learn to trust it. You become less afraid of the dark, less panicked in the pause, more fluent in the language of your own psyche. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What's trying to emerge right now?" That shift in attitude changes everything. Honoring the process, even while you function. So, if you're in the middle of this motivation desert right now, what can you do? How do you honor the process while still participating in life? Here are a few thoughts. 1. Normalize the experience. This is not a personal failure. You're not lazy, broken, or lost. You're in a deep transition, and transitions are supposed to feel unclear. 2. Rest when you can. Inner transformation uses a lot of unseen energy. You may look like you're doing nothing, but inside, your system is rewiring. Rest isn't indulgence, it's part of the work. 3. Presence versus progress. Stop obsessing over outcomes. Focus on how you show up in small, everyday moments. Presence is often more transformative than big plans. 4. Follow the small yes. Don't look for some grand purpose. Tune in to the smallest next right thing. What feels quietly aligned? What feels honest? 5. Trust timing. The seed doesn't sprout because you yell at it. Motivation will return on its own terms. Your only job is to make space. This isn't about performing spirituality. It's about embodying it. Let your life be your teacher. The deeper purpose. From Jung's perspective, the motivation crisis serves something profound. It clears out the false, the performative, the programmed, the parts of you that were acting from fear or habit. And it creates space for the authentic self to lead. When you go through this process, not once, but over and over, you contribute something essential to the human collective. Every time you integrate more of yourself, every time you stop bypassing and start being, you help evolve human consciousness itself. This is not just about your personal happiness. This is about our collective unfolding. Your healing echoes outward. The invitation. So, as we close this exploration, I want to leave you with this. Your motivation crisis is not a detour. It is the path. It's the space where your old identity dissolves and your real self starts to emerge. Don't rush through it. Don't try to shortcut it. Let it work on you. Let it hollow you out, because that's how space is made for something true to fill you. Let yourself become the kind of person who doesn't need motivation to push them, but who is drawn forward by something deeper, something honest, something already whole. This is the brutal, beautiful truth of transformation. It's not a glow-up, it's a death and rebirth. But on the other side of that death is you, clear-eyed, awake, aligned, not chasing life, but living it. If this resonated with you, share it. Someone else out there is probably wandering through the same desert right now. Subscribe if you want more deep dives like this on Jung, on spiritual psychology, on the messy beauty of becoming. And drop a comment. Tell me about your journey through the dark. Let's normalize this part of the path, because it's the part no one talks about, but everyone eventually walks through. Remember, the desert is not the end. It's the beginning of your real life. And the motivation you're waiting for, it's already inside you, waiting for you to become the person who can hear it.